steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing you can say can make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home. You.
Hello and welcome to DRS FC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. We are here to preview another race at another fun track and another sprint race. My God, this triple header weekend, like races every week. I love it. I'm enjoying life with all of this. I've got Eboni and Meghan here to preview the race with me. Eboni, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Decent. I'm going to say I'm good, but, you know, life has been lifing from time to time. Meghan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Ready for a spooky race weekend.
It is spooky season. Hopefully it's spooky for Max and no one else. A little bit biased on the pod. If you haven't figured that out yet, sorry. This is where we're at. We're going to talk about Interlagos, which I love as a track. I'm going to get into some of the like fun things that I really love about the track. I love the name of it. Interlagos just sounds great, but the straight up like translation is just between lakes, which is hilarious. There's just two man-made lakes on other sides. That's really all it means. But Interlagos sounds...
It just sounds better in Portuguese.
I know, right? It just sounds so much better. Interlagos sounds great. It sounds prestigious. I love it. It is a short track, 2.7 miles around. 71 laps is what they will be in the Grand Prix. But of course, it is also a sprint weekend. So you get right to it. There's one practice. There's sprint qualifying, then sprint race on Saturday, then Grand Prix qualifying that same Saturday after the sprint race, and then the Grand Prix on Sunday. So it's going to be intense. Meghan, you know a little bit about the history of this track, so let the people know.
Yeah, so the Brazilian GP has ended the season for most of F1's history. It's only within the last 5 years that we've started ending the season in the Middle East. The first race was held there in 1973, and there was a brief period where they left and raced in Rio de Janeiro, which was the home of Brazilians, the then most recent Brazilian world driver champion, Nelson Piquet. And so for a little bit, they gave it to his hometown, and now it's been back in Interlagos since 1990. Yeah,
that's cool. And a big fan of this race. This track is also really cool because it goes counterclockwise. So that's another thing with the racing style. It goes counterclockwise. And okay, so I'm a big video game person. I'm just a giant nerd like that, and I like racing games. And this track features obviously in the F1 games, but also in Gran Turismo. I don't know why I said Gran Turismo, because I've been saying Grand Prix. Gran Turismo is what I meant to say. and I like driving this track. Obviously, it's not the exact same, but it is one of the most fun tracks to drive. Especially, I think driving on like the video game, like simulation kind of games, is that you get an idea of the elevation, which is hard to understand when you're just kind of watching. Even onboard cameras, it's tough to tell like all of the swoops and turns and what they feel like. And when you're actually driving them, it's really cool. So that really long straight that goes into the Senna S's, that's like one of my favorite things about any track anywhere. Because you go through that straight and then it's downhill through those S's, and it's almost like a roller coaster ride. It's really, really cool. So I'm like here for it. But of course, like we said, because it's between two lakes, there's also a bit of an unstable climate. So Meghan looked it up and said, might be some weather impacting the entire weekend.
Yeah, as your F1 weather girl, what I'll tell you is we're looking for a hot quali and probably rain forecasted for the race, which will make it a very spooky and spicy main event.
So, Meghan, question. So, like we said, it's very unstable climate. We're projecting rain. Does this track have that history of a lot of crashes because of that rain?
It has definitely had some crashes that have had some pretty big impact. We're going to talk in just a second a little bit about some memorable races, and there have certainly been some memorable crashes at Brazil between tire degradation, between it being high altitude and adjusting to that and figuring out how to set your car up. And then when you add in rain, it's just made it very spicy over the years.
So this is also another 71 lap race in some very tough altitude. What is that doing to the bodies of the drivers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that Brazil is one of the races that they have to prep the hardest for all year because, Mexico City is high altitude too, but it's not the same from my understanding. And you're also going to a climate that's really humid, which means these drivers are losing a lot of weight over the race time. And so we joke sometimes that they're just rich boys driving in a circle. But this is when they get to prove they're really athletes, because to maintain your focus and your physical ability when it's high altitude, it will go from being hot to cold to rainy, and maintaining that focus. I can only imagine. I absolutely could not.
One of the things that's interesting to me about this track is that, like Mexico was interesting. It had its little like chicanes after. They're basically like 3 straights on in Mexico. And so Ferrari was really good there because you put the Ferrari in a straight line, it's going to fly. And that's what happened. Carlos Sainz flew. This track has straights, but it also has a very complex second sector. So that middle sector is really interesting, and a lot of like low speed turns and medium speed corners. You don't really have a lot of super low speed corners like you had sometimes in Mexico. So this track does kind of mess you up a little bit with setup. Like, how do you do it? Do you prioritize the straights? Do you prioritize the downforce for the corners? And then what does it do to your tires? And then, of course, with DRS, those straight, especially the straight that goes by pit lane, that's really long. So if somebody gets you DRS there and you don't have the pace to hold them off, that's like when we saw, I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but last year we did see Fernando Alonso get by Sergio Perez to take a spot on the podium. And I believe he caught him on that straight. And I think it was 0.053 seconds or something like that. Like, it was really, really close, and he got really, really close. And it was one of those like photo finish situations. But yeah, that can happen to you in this race because of the straight, especially if you have a car with DRS behind. So Meghan, you teased it. Let's get to it. Memorable races. There are quite a few because this track is terrific. There's a lot of really good racing. And because it used to punctuate seasons, there has been very important throughout the years as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of races that have kind of determined the world championship. Famously, Kimi Räikkönen won this race and beat Lewis Hamilton and Seb Vettel by 1 point for the world championship. But I think arguably the most controversial, and to our group probably the most exciting race other than last year, was when Lewis won his first World Drivers' Championship at Interlagos. The joke is that Lewis is actually half Brazilian. He has fully claimed it, and if you see his outfits this week, they will have a lot of Brazil references to it. So highly recommend checking out his Instagram feed. But in 2008, Lewis was racing for McLaren, and Felipe Massa, who is Brazilian, was racing for Ferrari. And so Felipe also would have been the first Brazilian since Senna, so it was a really big deal. And Felipe won the race. The whole garage was celebrating, and in the very last corner, Lewis passed Timo Glock to finish 5th, which was enough to knock out Massa by 1 point. There's an incredible YouTube video featuring Pussycat Dolls star Nicole Scherzinger, who was Lewis's girlfriend at the time, reacting in real time to realizing he had just won, and the entire Brazilian side of the garage at Ferrari looking like they had just been punched in the stomach. So surprisingly, Lewis is beloved in Brazil. There will definitely be a lot of Lewis fans there. And it's surprising only because he won his first World Drivers' Championship in Brazil over a Brazilian driver.
That is a name I have not heard in a very long time. Are they still making music?
Side note, she's in a Broadway show right now and is probably going to win a Tony Award for it. She plays, she's in Sunset Boulevard, and she's killing it right now. So props to Nicole. We'll always love Buttons. You can't tell me that that's not a bop. But yeah, did some great work in the F1 broadcast, reacting to her boyfriend. And they were one of the first it couples of that paddock, because all the other drivers were not necessarily dating famous people, and then you had Lewis dating a famous singer. So very fun. Highly recommend the YouTube video. We'll probably tweet it out some point this weekend, because truly, if you enjoy watching one fan base absolutely lose their minds and another fan base just collapse into despair, you cannot be beat.
That genuinely is incredible and quite the life update. I really appreciate it. So come to DRSFC for your F1 news and updates on all former Pussycat Dolls, apparently. So shout out to you for knowing that, because I'm like Ebony, hadn't heard that name in a long time, a very long time. Wow, Broadway. Who knew? That's amazing.
F1 is a simulation, because what is that?
Right? That is just incredible. It also is like kind of shocking because it really does also crystallize like how long Lewis has been at this. Like, wow. Just I know it off the top of my head, but like the details of it sometimes just blow my mind. Okay, let me go through what happened last year, and then we're going to get into this specific race after we take a little bit of a break, because there's a lot to talk about in terms of what this race could mean for constructors, for drivers, for everything else, and even further on down the grid. So last year, if you look at the calendar, you'll see that last year was 2023, and that means Max Verstappen probably won this race, and you would be right. He did. He won the race, although Charles Leclerc, who was probably his biggest competition in this race, was out during the formation lap due to a hydraulics problem. So that was really unfortunate for him in the Grand Prix. But Lando Norris was second. As I said earlier, Fernando Alonso took third spot from Sergio Perez with that late final lap lunge that got him over the line by, 0.053 seconds. The margins in F1 are ridiculous. And Lance Stroll finished fifth.
First of all, didn't know he could do that.
The question I have is like, what happened to everybody else?
Yeah, did everybody else drop out?
Right.
I wasn't aware that Lance Stroll could do that.
That's wild. To be fair, was he?
They probably told him in the radio, "You came in fifth," and he was like, "Excuse me." Like,
fifth what?
Fifth from lap?
Incredible. Sprint race was not quite the same. No Lance Stroll, at least in the top 7. I didn't look up to see where he finished because it didn't really matter, and I don't care. But Max did win the sprint as well. Lando Norris, again, second place. Sergio Perez, this time, was third. He was on the podium for the sprint. Then it was George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Yuki Tsunoda, and then Lewis Hamilton.
In the last episode, we talked a little bit about how, for me, competent Ferrari is the best part of the season. This is where I talk about, we had so many races last year where like a half competent team, you had a hydraulics issue from the formation lap right when Charles was doing well, and nope, didn't make it. So hopefully this year, it's not quite the max sweep that it was last year.
I mean, Ferrari's hooping to steal an André line. They low key moving real silent, but they coming. It's getting close up there for constructors. I'm gonna just throw that out there.
Well, that's what's so fascinating to me about Ferrari is them actually being good in kind of all phases of conducting a race. So the drivers are killing it, the development is killing it, the strategy is killing it, the pit crew is killing it. Like this is not typical Ferrari. So like if you have like a 3-month-old nephew or something, or like a maybe even like a 6-week-old nephew or something, this is a Ferrari that we're not too familiar with, but they might be. So I'm just kind of like hoping that this lasts, because they've had a really good season. In fact, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and they were chronicling all of the mishaps that Ferrari had in the first part of the season. And without some of the really silly stuff that happened, there was a point where Charles was like 31 points away from Max. And if he could have just maintained just average levels of performance, he'd be right there. Like this would legitimately, it wouldn't even be Lando and Max. It would be like Charles has, like, he's going to win the Drivers' Championship. But so much of the beginning of the season was just so weird for them. And then they had that weird dip after they won Monaco as well. So like they've been up and down this season, but they're on cruise control right now.
As a reminder, listeners, when we talk about the Constructors' Championship being so close, McLaren is currently in first with 566 points. Ferrari is in second with 537 points, and Red Bull is in a distant third with 512 points. And so what is exciting about this season is that in both drivers and constructors, it's coming down to these final races, which means Brazil will be a blast.
Yeah, Brazil will be fun. And how many of these three teams have two drivers capable of being on the podium in pretty much every race? It feels like Ferrari might be the only one. Where's Oscar been?
It's just the one. Like I hate it for him, but it's just the one. And that's shocking because it's not the one you think. So
Right.
yeah. I feel like we're gonna get into it. We're gonna take a break.
Yeah, let's take a quick break and get into it because there's a lot to talk about. So, all right, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Let's talk about the drivers. That's not what we're talking about. Well, we can. Yeah, whatever. We'll talk about constructors first because we were just talking about that. And really, I think the wild thing is for me is that it looked like McLaren was going to run away with it because it looked like Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were had that brief period before the second break, long break, that both of their drivers were fighting for the top step on the podium. And if that's the case, you're guaranteed a lot of points every single weekend, and you're just there's no space for anybody else to catch up. That team is now Ferrari. I don't know what's going on with Oscar. Ever since they told him that, ever since they told Lando that he was going to need Oscar, Oscar was like, "Nah, never mind. I'm not going to be here." He gave us the Magic Johnson meme. But I don't know. And of course, Red Bull with Sergio Perez. That's a lost cause. So, a sprint weekend with a lot more points on the line and the Grand Prix, Ebony. Are we thinking Ferrari's going to come out of Brazil on top?
I see it being very close. I don't see Ferrari changing too much about what they're doing because it's working. So I could very much see two Ferraris on the podium, whether it's 1-2, 1-3, or even 2-3 is a very successful race for them. So I think they're making all the right moves because they know what's coming up next season. And now it's time. Now they're executing, and they're doing it pretty damn well.
I don't know what to do with my hands about this because Ferrari doing well consistently just makes me nervous. But nervous in a good way, right? Nervous that we could actually win something for once. We talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but it'll be interesting to see how the season ends. If Max and Lando keep doing silly things to each other. Does Ferrari have to make some more difficult strategical decisions? Does Carlos Sainz get to say, "F all y'all, I'm heading out"? Does Carlos Sainz say, "Hey, I think Red Bull's going to have an open spot. I know I just signed a contract, but Ayo Red Bull, you want to pay for me to get out of it?" So there's a lot of interesting things that could happen just related to Ferrari potentially, knock on wood, doing well.
I'm going to request that you not put the energy of Carlos Sainz to Red Bull out in the atmosphere. That really hurt my feelings, if I'm honest. Just that I don't want to live in that reality. So please don't do those things anymore. But it is kind of silly that Carlos Sainz was available. Everybody knew he was going to replace Lewis Hamilton next year. And a lot of big teams were like, "Nah, we're good," especially Red Bull. If they would have made that move, that driver lineup would have been quite terrifying because Carlos, while he's not viewed in the same lens as Lewis Hamilton, even Charles Leclerc, who has typically on a day will have faster pace and usually has really good race pace as well. Lando Norris is up there as well as the top tier of drivers. Sainz is not far behind them. I mean, I feel like it's a 1A, 1B situation. It's not number two. He's not a whole tier below them. And it sounds like he's very, very important behind the scenes in getting teams together. He's good with engineers. He's good giving feedback to talk about what's wrong with the car, what needs to be changed. And it's going to be really beneficial to Williams, but it could be way more beneficial to a team who could put him in a car that could be on the podium, and probably unlikely to be Williams in 2025.
I think that he's not staying at Williams for long.
True.
That, let's just throw that out there. He's a very good driver. I believe I read somewhere where someone's he's actually super underrated, which I agree. I'm very new to this sport, but I can see the potential in him. And I think he likes the project that Williams is building. I don't think he stays long enough to see it through.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he's going to be there to help them like kind of kickstart and continue to build forward. Like they've made some leaps in this season and he's just going to help them more. But I mean, I think he's 30. I don't think he's thinking like Williams is my long-term team. Like I'm going to stick with them until they have a car that's able to be on the podium because who the hell knows when that's going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. And like you said, Ebony, how long he's actually at Williams anyway.
The girls and the gays need more images of Carlos Sainz celebrating in a club, running his hands through his hair. So for all of us, for the good of humanity, I think we need him on a winning team.
You know, this brings up that, what was it? Who was the outlet that put out like a ranking of the best looking drivers and Sainz was like way lower than he should have been?
Oh my God, that pissed me off so much.
Oh, I was so mad on his behalf. I was like, what are y'all do? Look at the man.
They don't know ball. What is happening?
Honestly, I think we know what it is. What does the Family Guy mean? Where with the police officer with the scale?
Yeah.
The white complexions up top, like they were okay in the dark. Yeah. I mean,
okay, but here's the problem.
That is objectively a beautiful man.
Do you know who was number one though? Do you remember?
I forgot.
It was Lewis.
Yeah, okay. So, you know what? They did that. You know what? This is why DEI gets a bad rap. They did that on purpose. They didn't want the charges, and so they put Lewis on top. Which listen, I think Lewis is great. Like Lewis is my favorite driver, maybe of all time. But like, they know what they did with that. You can't fool me.
Are you going to tell me that Lewis Hamilton is hotter than Alonso?
Alonso was
objectively no.
It was People magazine one. So like, you know, it's People, whatever. But the top 5, just for everyone's interest, and they only ranked 15 of them, and I'm like, there were more than 15 drivers. Why did you guys just not rank some people? That's bizarre. Number 1 was Lewis. Number 2 was Charles. Number 3 is where the controversy is going to be. George Russell.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Number 4 is Alonso. And number 5, above number 6, Pierre Gasly. Number 5 is Max Verstappen. Excuse me. No.
Oh, hell no. No. In no way possible. No, not having that.
Nico Hulkenberg was ranked above
That's not
Carlos.
even right.
And like, Nico's not a bad looking guy, but he's not Carlos.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Objectively.
I need to see the methodology, right? This is one of those things where I'm like, I got questions. I need to understand who was polled, what the methodology was, like, what are they looking at? How are they defining this? Because it can't be just straight up aesthetics because this is that list is horrendous. I hate it. Okay. Let's get back to talking about the championships, plural, that are on the line. As I said, you know, I felt it was a little interesting because I can't do math quickly in my head, but Ferrari are 29 points behind McLaren in the constructors. Now, with the sprint weekend, this makes it a lot more feasible that there's a possibility they could take the lead, but likely not. I think Lando or Piastri would have to not get points in one of the races or maybe both for them to make up the point gap, but still Ferrari could still get very, very close. That is something to keep an eye on throughout this race and this race weekend with the sprint and the Grand Prix. Now, let's talk about the Drivers' Championship a little bit, because honestly, I'm not even going to do the math. Basically, you just need Lando Norris to like take out a big chunk of points from Max Verstappen in this race, or like maybe he can hold off until Vegas if the gap is big enough. But really, this is kind of last chance. It has to happen soon. If you don't get a big chunk of points out of him, like, it's kind of already a wrap. And I actually think a lot of people are already saying it's over. So like, but I have heard there's a chance that Max will have an engine penalty because he went to an older engine for Mexico. He hated the pace of that car. So it looks like they're going to get at least a 5 grid spot penalty. That'll be enforced in the Grand Prix. And there's also the possibility that now seems like the stewards are paying closer attention and judging his maneuvers on the track a lot more fairness, I would say. I'm not going to say strictness because I think they've been very lenient, but with a lot more fairness and doling out penalties against him. So I think he's in an interesting spot in this race.
I think what makes it hard is, does Lando have the mental fortitude to come back from a disappointing race and really challenge? I wouldn't say he had like a terrible race. Obviously, he still finished up there, but he definitely has seemed rattled in some of the press availability this week. He had some sort of quote come out today where he essentially was like, Max knows he did wrong deep down inside of him. Cool, great. Max is a real life supervillain. I'm sure he knows he did wrong. Does he care? No, like absolutely not. The other hard part, if you're a recent F1 fan, to remember is that each race is individually stewarded by different stewards. So there's not consistent officiating across each race, which is like a personal pet peeve of mine. And so, Max doesn't inherently have more love from the Brazilian public than anybody else. But he is a world champion before. And so does he get maybe not the same stewarding that he got last time? Hopefully it's consistent. Hopefully they see that folks are getting upset about it. There was a driver's meeting after the last race where everybody but one person, and supposedly that one person was Valtteri Bottas randomly, was like, hey, we would just like the new racing standards to be applied this year instead of waiting till next year. And some of those standards would involve Max having to change the way he drives.
Bottas is a straight up chaos agent. Like it doesn't, like at first I was like, I'm surprised, but then I was like, no, I'm not really surprised.
I'm a little shocked that I was a little shocked it was Bottas, but after like truly thinking about it, he doesn't really, the rules don't apply to him anyway, especially with the way he's been driving this year. So he doesn't care what the stewards think at this point. If you had said like K-Mag, I would have been like, ooh, buddy, you sure? Or even Stroll. Like, not that he's bad, it's just he doesn't race well. So the rules might actually help him.
Yeah, Bottas in that Sauber, it's just like always kind of back of the grid. I think they had like their best weekend in Mexico and he finished 14th. So it's still, and that was with like 3 cars like DNFing. So like, I'm like, yeah, I guess he's just like, it doesn't really bother me. So I'm just going to go the opposite direction, which feels like a very Bottas thing to do. The one thing I guess that I kind of want to talk a little bit about is Max's driving. And we've kind of had these discussions before, and obviously it's been the main comment or the commentary of all the podcasts and all the TV shows and everything that I've watched. In fact, the former 90s F1 driver, Damon Hill, had a hilarious quote where he likened Max Verstappen to Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races back in the day, which I thought was just a great reference and hilarious. Because you know what? Put the mustache on Max and I can see it. That's all I'm saying.
Wow.
but like, to me, the thing that gets on my nerves the most about what Max has done and how people are kind of in two camps with this, where it's like, one, it's genius, and the other is it's dangerous. But for me, it just feels like it's shameless. Like, not to run another driver off the track. They don't have to encode it in a special article or rule in a guideline. You're just not supposed to be shameless enough to do something like that. And so the fact that he is just kind of makes it like, kind of messes the sport up a lot. And now they have to go through and put all these amendments and rules and clauses and articles in to kind of really define how you're supposed to race and what you're supposed to do. When really it's like, can we just have common sense here? And again, this is something that goes back years with Max Verstappen. He's such a talented driver that he doesn't need to do this. Like, really, what you're talking about is just letting your car run straight. Doesn't matter if you're going to take the turn or not. Like, make the turn or not and stay on the track. Just let your car run straight. If somebody's trying to take you on the outside, you can just, it's almost like, what do they say in the NFL? Like, the goal line extends around the world. It's kind of like that. If you just stay on that line straight, they will never be able to pass you, because eventually you're going to take that turn and you're not going to get penalized for it. But in Mexico, he got penalized for it. To me, that's not a clever racing maneuver. It's just like you're running somebody off the track and not really getting punished for it until recently. So I want to see him have to like rely on his actual like racing skill, which we know he's very good at. He kept Lando Norris behind him way longer than he should have, partly because he used some pretty terrible maneuvers. So I am interested, though, to see, good wheel-to-wheel racing with Max not having that maneuver pay off for him. But here's the problem. The reason why I do completely agree with Damon Hill is that Max doesn't care. He'll take all the penalties. The point isn't necessarily to finish as high as he can finish. It's to stop Lando from finishing high. Like if Lando got by Charles Leclerc in Mexico, if he gets by Max quickly, there's a chance he could put pressure on Sainz for the win. That's what Max feels like he's doing, is just holding up Lando because he knows the McLaren's a better car. And to me, that's, you can call it smart, but it just feels sinister to me.
In 2024, let's bring back shame on and off the track. Like you are talented. You have one of the best cars on the grid. At times, the season was the best car. It hasn't seemed to have developed that way. You clearly are incredible. You're probably one of the historically best drivers, particularly for how early you came into the sport and how long you've been doing this. You don't have to do this. And I understand that for him, it seems like it is more fun to play these mind games and to kind of be in everybody else's head. But at a certain point, and people have been calling for this point from 2020 on, and really before that too, but 2020 was really when he like first had the ability to make these kind of major challenges. They've been calling for this to happen, and they just need to have enough backbone to tell him he can't do it anymore. I think similarly, like I mentioned earlier, like, does Lando have the mindset of like coming back? Similarly, does his teammate have the mindset of helping him fight off Max? Because depending on where they end up, sweet baby Oscar, sorry friend, you're not going to win Drivers' Championship this year. So what we need you to do for the good of the team is to go scrap with Max. And not necessarily like injure him or crash, but we need you to take up his time so that Lando can get through. And this is all dependent on where they end up on the race. But based on where they have been qualifying lately, like Oscar's going to fall right there. And I think it'll be interesting to see how and if Oscar can be the kind of team player that McLaren is going to try to deploy in hopes of knocking Max back or keeping him from zooming up the field. Because if it is a 5-place penalty, conceivably that's still in the top 10 depending on where he qualifies. And most likely he's going to qualify in the top 5. And like, it is conceivable that he could get through the field depending on what happens with weather and stuff. So, will be interesting to see McLaren. I, for one, love that it's other team strategies that we get to talk about now. So McLaren, all eyes on you, buddy. Let's find out what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is in order to avoid these, because basically I think Lando knows what's going to happen now. If you're behind Max, he's going to do what he does, especially this year. Maybe next year, he's not going to be so willing to take penalties because the goal will, like, that'll just hurt him in the long run and he'll lose a lot of points. Like right now, he's in the lead. He's in a position of strength. So it doesn't really matter. All he has to do is keep Lando behind him long enough to where Lando can't pick up maximum points on him. That's really all he's doing right now. The only way to avoid that, Lando, big pressure on qualifying. You got to out-qualify Max Verstappen. It's a very hard thing to do, but you have a much better car than he does right now. So you do need to make sure that at the start of the race, he's behind you. And when the race starts and the first lap finishes, he's still behind you. Those are things that are also important for Lando to do. And it would be helpful if Oscar was right there to kind of help either be a buffer or keep Max away from Lando. Right now, like, we have yet to see it be the team effort that it was promised to be to Lando in Hungary. And that needs to change real quick. If not just for, kind of running interference and keeping Max away, slowing him down, backing him off, just straight up finish ahead of Max to push him down and lower the number of points he can get. Like, somehow you really need to build this gap. And it's really hard to do that if Lando is finishing second or third and Max is finishing fifth or sixth. That's not going to cut it. There aren't enough races left. So, Ebony, I want to talk to you about Mercedes.
Mercedes has confuzzled me. Is that a word? That's going to be a word. They're confusing because there are times when you're like, oh, they figured it out. And then they both end up in 6th and 7th battling each other. They're not even battling like any other team. They're battling each other. And you're just like looking around like, is it Russell just being like, well, it's my team now, so I want to show that I can beat you? Or is it Hamilton like, let me try out these new moves? Because remember, when he crashed and then Russell crashed, he offered his car to Russell. Just be like, here, dude, you can use mine because I'm not going to need it next season. So I'm very lost on how Toto is talking to them and what is he telling them actively? Be like, hey, just go have fun out there. This is not our season. We're working on improvements. Although he doesn't think it's the car, apparently. We're still on that. I'm lost. Help.
I think what makes it extra confusing too is like, is this a reflection of you guys picking the wrong development path like a year and a half ago? Because Mercedes, if you remember, had all the crazy porpoising problems. I almost said dolphining, and I was like, wrong sea mammal. Had all those problems, and last year it was like, oh, we think we're finally back on the right track. Neither driver seems to have a good indication of what it is. Like, they both seem mad, but not mad at each other, just like generally annoyed with the situation. Like Ebony said, Toto doesn't think it's the car. These two drivers are two of the best. Like, George Russell, for all of his very English qualities, I guess is the nicest way to put it. Like, he is a good driver. He has been successful and he will fight for it and he's done well. And then you have the greatest of all time next to him. Like, I don't think they're giving bad feedback. I don't think they're not capable of driving a car. There is something fundamentally wrong. And I almost wonder whether they have just decided 2026. Like, if they have just said, we're so sorry, George. We know we promised you a good car. Lewis is leaving. We think it's better to just spend our time. Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull have nailed this in. Which doesn't absolve them of making a good car now, but it just seems like there's just no reasoning to what's going on. And that almost makes me feel worse because it's like, you guys haven't figured it out and we're almost at the end. Like, come on.
Yeah, my problem with Mercedes right now is that they almost don't have any incentive to do anything differently because they're in fourth. They're not going to catch Red Bull in third in constructors, and Aston Martin's not good enough to catch them where they're at. The gaps are too big and there aren't enough races left. So what are they really fighting for? You would hope pride. You would hope just like giving Lewis Hamilton like a good send off. I guess they think he got the Silverstone win and that's like good enough. But it'd be nice to like have you're going to have a rookie in that car next season. And as good as you think he is, you're going to still need to give him a quality car. And you would like to see the development this season be on par with the cars that you want to be battling with next season. The McLaren, the Ferrari, even the Red Bull is when it's driven by Max is better than their car. That's some stuff that I'm frustrated about with Mercedes. And also the battle between Toto and his drivers about what the new upgrade. Both the drivers went off and crashed on the exact same turn in Austin. Mm-hmm. In Mexico, you had more crashing. George had a big crash. They needed to I think they had to replace the entire chassis. And now he's saying they got cost cap problems. And that's, to me, feels like it's the entire fault of the upgrade, where if he could have just listened to the drivers and them saying, hey, I don't think like something is happening with this car that's making it really hard to drive. Maybe you back off on the upgrade and do some more testing and try to figure it out. Instead, they persisted. And now I've had to rebuild multiple cars and have also gone down a bad path and look no closer to figuring out what the actual issues are with that car and getting it back in contention. So I'm just like super down on Mercedes right now. And I'm actually really glad Lewis is leaving because this is some bullshit.
So my question is, for 2025, does Mercedes see itself in a battle with like the McLaren, Red Bull, and Ferrari? Because right now, nothing indicates that they are within a quarter of like their developments. Or are they saying we just need to be above the pack that we are in front of now until we can get to 2026 and really go at like McLaren, Red Bull?
I think we won't know until the off season. And I think the way you'll know is how they use George Russell in press, right? Like how he talks about the upcoming season, I think will indicate whether they have sort of decided to punt and just be looking towards 2026. Ferrari had a similar situation happen before the last update in developments, where it was like clear they were lost in the wilderness, and they just sort of kept talking about like, we're really excited for the future. And then people would ask questions about the next season and they're like, right, we reiterate, really excited about the future. And so if we get answers kind of like that, I think we'll know. But I think it's hard when we saw Mercedes looked like they were just like running on all cylinders, both on the business side and on the engineering side and on the driver's side. To sort of watch this like creep of complacency, I think is almost the best word for it, because, you know, we used to see Toto slam his fist on the table when Lewis would lose. And now I still love Toto, most handsome man of his age. Absolutely would. But like he doesn't really seem like he's checked in. And that might be an unfair like view, right? We're only seeing what we're seeing on TV cameras. Drive to Survive, I'm sure it's gonna have some sort of Mercedes mess episode. But it just seems like nobody is plugged in as they used to be. And I can't imagine how frustrating that is for the drivers, who must feel like, well, what's going on? I'm risking my life every weekend. I'm doing this. I only have so many years of doing this. And like, what are we doing? And so I think that's just kind of hard to parse through.
Yeah, to be honest, I think your leniency to wait and see how George sounds in interviews is admirable. For me, it feels like they've already signaled they're going to have a rookie driver in a car next year. They're not competing for championships. They know better than that. Especially where their development is now, like maybe they'll have a package that like boosts them up for a minute, but people are continuing to pull ahead of them and starting from higher places up than they are. I think they're all about 2026. Get Kimi Antonelli a full season under his belt, figure out the new regulations and try to really go there. And don't forget, Toto was trying to court Max. He's going to try and do that in 2026 anyway. Adrian Newey left Red Bull. You don't really know what's going on. I think Aston Martin might try to get Max as well. Like if Max is available and Red Bull's kind of still lagging behind McLaren and Ferrari, he'll probably be on the market and trying to look at who's going to get the regulations in 2026. I think Mercedes is already looking a year ahead right now.
My way too early prediction is that Mercedes pulls a Ferrari from seasons past, where they pick one race that's symbolic to them and try really hard to push all their upgrades to that. So for Ferrari, it was always Monza or Monaco for Charles. Obviously didn't work until this year, but in 2019, obviously, Monza worked. I think they identify the British Grand Prix and that they try to give that to George as like, oh, we're so sorry we ruined your year. Here, have a little piece of candy. And I will bet you that we will see a bunch of upgrades before that next year. Way too early prediction.
No, that's actually a really good prediction. I was going to say they would do it in like a German race, but there aren't any. And the Nürburgring is dangerous, so I understand. That place is absolutely awful to drive. Okay, back to looking at not Mercedes because they're looking a year ahead. I think we all believe that. Let's look back to Brazil. Drivers who need to lock in. Let's just name a few and see if we're on the same page with some of these. Then we'll kind of go to what else we're looking for in this race and do our Zoomy Boy and Gloomy Boy predictions. So, Ebony, who needs to lock in?
This list looks very familiar. It's because it's the same. It's the same guys still fucking up and who still need to lock in. Checo, buddy. Your season was summarized by you talking shit. You talking shit from 15th.
How are you gonna hate from outside the club? You can't even get in. Boom! 2000 song reference, baby.
I love it. Oh. Yeah, I want you to lock in to being a family man. That's what I need you to lock into.
Lock into doing some business, having a briefcase,
right.
Doing some stuff.
There you go. I'm sure he could get on TV. He'd be a great broadcaster. You know, like I think it might be a wrap, buddy. I don't see. Although, all right, I'm not going to get into it. I'm just saying, like the Red Bull. I have questions about that Red Bull team. There were a couple things that the FIA came out and were like, yeah, somebody had this device on the car. We're not going to say who, but it was kind of helping in braking. Surprisingly, Checo has been complaining a lot about braking recently. So I don't really know if I'm putting two and two together and kind of being slight conspiracy theorist. I could say maybe we're just not seeing the best out of Checo for a reason. And maybe if he goes to a different team, you see his actual driving skill. Because I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that he's like one of the worst drivers like on the grid. He's just not. That dude spent a lot of time at the top, like top fives and on podiums. You just don't lose it that quickly.
Worst driver, Lance Stroll is still here. Stop it.
Yeah. Facts. Facts. Megan, anybody else need to lock in?
It pains me to say this, but Yuki, my dude, if you would like to stay in F1, you gotta lock in. You can't be slipping. You can't be fighting with Liam Lawson, who was the biggest heel of last week. My God, he started a fight with everyone. But Yuki, you cannot be revoked, buddy. You gotta lock in. You can't crash. You gotta do well because your future quite literally rests on it, or else you are gonna go race some really fun races somewhere else in a different series.
Rally car.
Wow. My driver who needs to lock in is Oscar for all the reasons we've already talked about. I just think that like you're driving one of the best cars on the grid. You can't like, even if you're finishing fifth, you're finishing a distant fifth. That's not okay. Like you shouldn't be hanging around with the Mercedes. Like we've already just talked about how they're struggling. You need to be higher up for point purposes because McLaren can win the constructors, but they can't do it with just one driver. Ferrari has two. You need to be one of those drivers up there as well. It's just like, I don't know what's happened to him recently. I think Ebony on a previous episode, you said like maybe they just mess with his like head. Like he's just not like he's upset that they want him to support Lando now. And so he's not fully locked in. It feels like that's truer and truer each race weekend. And at this point, if that is the case, he's only really hurting his own career right now because he has completely fallen out of the list of like drivers who are like, you look at and say, hey, these young guys are coming. Like there's been a lot more talk of Franco Colapinto and Liam Lawson than there has Oscar Piastri the past couple races. It shouldn't be like that. All right. Ebony, anything else you're looking for before we get to our predictions for Zoomy and Gloomy Boy?
I'm looking for Colapinto to back up his words because
spicy.
You've got to lock in for 2025. Like you came out with that very hot quote about if Williams doesn't want to race me, then they should release me based on the rumors about Red Bull. Well, are you Red Bull material, my guy? I know you're Williams material. Are you Red Bull material? So
fair.
I need you to... He should also be one of my lock-ins. Like, he needs to lock it in. Because if you don't, and you get through Brazil not anywhere near the points, and then you get to Vegas, and it's just even more 13th, 14th type area. Well, they already got one of those. Like, he's driving right now, and he's barely making it through. Why do they need to add someone else to that to pay off somebody? You know? So he's got to back up his word. So that's what I'm looking for this weekend.
All right. Pressure on Franco Colapinto, everyone's favorite son, all of a sudden. If I feel like it'll be the most, like if he ends up going to Red Bull, it's just going to be like an Evil Empire situation. Like we were all rooting for you situation. Megan, what are you looking for in this race?
One word, chaos. I just want chaos energy. I want crashes where nobody gets injured. I want rain. I want tires that don't know what the hell they're doing because it was hot and then it was cold and nobody had data because it's a sprint weekend. I would love the season to be fun. And so I am always team chaos.
Okay. I'm here for it. I just worry that chaos at this point of the season just will only benefit Max, but you know what? I guess at least give us entertainment. So maybe I'm here for it. All right. It's Zoomy and Gloomy Boy time. Zoomy Boy, Ebony, who you got?
My Zoomy Boy. I said Lewis. It's one of his favorites, and they love him there. So I'm hoping he can break out of this whatever slump Mercedes has him in, and have a good fun race.
Okay. Lewis also has a lot of history in Brazil. I also heard he's going to be driving Senna's car on Saturday after one of the sessions, and that's just incredible. Like, I want to see that. I don't know if we're going to get, I'm sure we'll get social media stuff of it, but like it's going to be super cool to see that car, first of all, but also just to know that Lewis is in it. That's going to be fun. So maybe that'll give him a little jolt of I don't know, confidence, excitement, whatever, encouragement for the weekend. Megan, your Zoomy Boy.
Because I remain true to myself. If I want chaos, what I really want is I want Charles to win and I want Lando and Max to crash into each other because then that puts us closer to having a three-way battle both on the team side and the driver championship side. Now, again, never rooting for an injury. So I would like them to crash in a very comical yakety sax way, and not a scary injury way. So yakety sax, Charles win.
Wow. All right.
Was that a word?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the way it's been happening is Lando and Max fight, a Ferrari comes through and wins. Like that's pretty much the way it's gone. So there's a high likelihood that this happens again. I'm kind of torn on who my Zoomy boy is going to be. Like, I don't know who to predict. I kind of want to go with Pierre Gasly, but he's driving an Alpine, so I don't really. He's been qualifying well, but the race pace just is an Alpine. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg. I've been surprised at Haas. They got double points in Mexico, and Magnussen finished above him, which was a little bit surprising. Had his best finish of the season, 7th. And I think Hülkenberg will probably respond. So I think maybe we'll see Haas again with another strong weekend. I think they did good the last in Austin, the last sprint race that was there. They had kind of a shorter, it's one practice session. I think they excel in some of these situations where other teams scramble a little bit. So maybe I'm going to go with Nico. We'll see what the Hulk can do. All right, let's get sad. Meghan, Gloomy Boy, who's going to be real sad besides Max and Lando for crashing into each other yakety sax style?
So it came out over the weekend, I guess after the weekend, that Fernando, in addition to having to leave his 400th race, also had a case of stomach bug so bad he had to fly back to Europe to see a specialist, which just doesn't sound ideal and doesn't sound like I want to be in a car going really, really fast at the same time. And so I think that's just going to be really difficult to overcome. I get that he wants to race and that he does not want to be stopped or limited, but just seems like you could have taken the weekend off and do, bud. Doesn't seem like it'll be much fun.
Yeah, that was a tough one. That was an interesting report. Aston Martin all of a sudden just posted on social media like, oh, had an infection and going to see a specialist. It was like, whoa, okay. And you expecting a race this weekend. All right. Ebony, Gloomy Boy, who you got?
Checo. He's just going to be sad for the next 4 races. And then he's got to go buy a suit and tie to work a 9 to 5. So that's all I got.
He's got so much to do. He's got a sprint weekend. He's got to go shopping. Like it's going to be a busy weekend for him. It's going to be hard to focus. I understand. That's a good one. Okay. My Gloomy Boy. Who am I gonna choose? You know what? I'm going to stay on brand. I'm not even going to choose a person. As much as this hurts me because I love Lewis Hamilton, I think Mercedes are going to be gloomy again. I just don't trust the development. I don't trust what they're doing with the car. It sounds like they're running out of money to do anything given the cost cap and having to rebuild cars. It doesn't feel like they've got a handle on the developments as well. I don't know if there's going to be another crash, but would it surprise you? They've crashed in every race since the return. So I'm concerned about them. And especially if there's weather out there, Lewis can drive quite well in the rain, but I just don't know how that car will react to those kind of conditions. So I'm looking at Mercedes to have a pretty poor weekend. So that's what we got. That's where we're at. We'll see if we're right in the future, the very near future, by the way, because the schedule starts soon. Friday, 10:25 a.m. Eastern. You have the only practice session of the day. It is on ESPNU, again, 10:25 a.m. Eastern. And then you have sprint qualifying that same Friday. It's 2:25 p.m. That is on ESPN2. And then on Saturday, you have a sprint race early in the morning, 9:55 a.m. I said early in the morning because, I'm not a morning person. It's actually not early, but 9:55 a.m. on ESPN2. That's a sprint race. Later in the day, 1:55 p.m. on ESPN Plus and ESPN News, your Grand Prix qualifying. And then the big race, the feature race, the Grand Prix is Sunday, 12 p.m. at noon, ESPN Plus, ESPN2, with a replay on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. Ebony, Meghan, anything else to say before we get out of here?
No, should be a fun one.
All right, good. watch it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a wild weekend. We'll do obviously a review of the race once it's all over and all the chaos happens and we say that Meghan was right about everything. And then also Ebony with Franco, and hopefully Sergio finds a good tailor and some suits to try on. And we'll be back to review the race and maybe Sergio's taste in suits. We'll see what happens. For Ebony and Meghan, I'm Andre. We'll talk to y'all later. Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.